Good evening from Singapore and the Philippines. Good morning and good afternoon for those watching us from other parts of the globe. I am Consul Gonar Musor from the Philippine Embassy in Singapore, and I wish to thank you for joining us this evening via live stream on the Facebook page of the Philippine Embassy Singapore and Rated J. As a Foreign Service Officer, one of the constant issues that we face is migration. In fact, the third pillar of the Philippine foreign policy is the promotion of the rights and welfare of Filipinos overseas. As an avid reader, I've always been drawn to biographies and memoirs of former and current diplomats. This made me realize now that they can also be considered loosely a subset of diasporic literature, given that diplomats are also part of this wave of diaspora as our job requires us to do so. I hope then that our viewers would be as interested as I am in our webinar for this evening, presented by Central Rizal Singapore in partnership with Rated J. Writing about the Filipino diaspora, its impact on migration discourse and Philippine culture. To formally start the program, His Excellency Ambassador Joseph del Mar Yap will deliver his welcome remarks.
From here in Singapore, I would like to warmly welcome all of you, our kababayans and viewers who are joining us on Facebook. Good morning to those in the Americas, good afternoon to those in Europe, and good evening to those in Singapore and in Asia. I'm pleased to welcome you to the Central Rizal Singapore presentation in partnership with Rated J. As a cultural arm of the Philippine Embassy, the Central Rizal Singapore was inspired to conceptualize and host this webinar after three young Filipino writers recently released their publications that had one common thread: the Filipino diaspora as portrayed through various genres. Diasporic literature is nothing new, as previous waves of diaspora from other countries have inspired many literary art forms that continue to capture our interest and imagination up to this day. With these three Filipino writers who will serve as our panelists tonight, we hope that this will further encourage more of our kababayans to share their own experiences and narratives as part of the Philippine diaspora. From a cultural perspective, while Filipino diasporic literature is not something completely new, it is still a developing frontier when it comes to showcasing Filipino literary talent, as well as Philippine culture and psyche in general, especially in the context of the culture and psyche of living in a different country and among different cultures. To avoid preempting the discussion tonight, let me just thank our panelists who come from different corners of the world to join us this evening. Our media partner, Rated J, and our viewers from Singapore, Philippines, and the rest of the world for taking the time to join this conversation. Thank you. Maraming salamat po. And we wish everybody a wonderful time this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador Yap. Before I introduce the speakers, I wish to invite our viewers to participate during the open forum later in the program by posting their questions below on the comments section. So this applies to our viewers who are watching this webinar either through the Embassy or Rated J's Facebook page. We can also be watched through the YouTube page of the Embassy. Later, we will be flashing on screen the questions posed by our viewers. So let me now introduce our three esteemed panelists. So the first one is a writer and researcher whose work has been published in several countries, regions, and cultures. Her short fiction has appeared in 22 New Asian Short Stories 2016 and Kitab's The Best Asian Short Stories 2018. She has contributed poetry to various anthologies and journals in Singapore, Croatia, and the US. She has co-edited Get Lucky, an anthology of Philippine and Singapore writings, and is the author of the novel The Rosales House. Please help me in welcoming all the way from Atlanta, Georgia, Ms. Migs Bravo Dutt. Good morning, Migs.
Good evening, Consul Gonar. Thank you for having me here. It's a pleasure to see you all this morning here in Atlanta, evening in Singapore, and I think it's afternoon in Switzerland. So looking forward to our chat with our kababayans.
Thank you, Migs, and I look forward to the discussion later. Okay, so our second panelist is a business process improvement leader and a certified public accountant with over 20 years of professional experience in the Philippines, Singapore, US, UK, and Switzerland. She earned her BS Accountancy degree from LS.A University and is currently taking her postgraduate degree in strategy and innovation at the Said Business School, University of Oxford. As a passion project, she self-published her book, The Overseas Fabulous Pinay, a modern Filipina's handbook on how to thrive abroad in March of this year. This book won the Gold Award in the 2020 Nonfiction Book Awards and was honored as a finalist in the Best Book Interior Design category in the 2020 International Book Awards. She also blogs about overseas life and features Filipino role models based abroad in her podcast, the OV Fab Pinays. Let's all greet a wonderful afternoon to Miss Donna Avellana Künzler.
Hi, Gonar, and also to Ambassador Yap. Thank you so much for having me today. And to all the people watching today, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. I'm looking forward to our discussion.
Same here, Donna. So last but not the least is a writer based in the Philippines and happily married with 4 children. She has written several short stories, including Passage, which was anthologized in Word of Thunder 2, Anthology of Philippine Short Stories, published by UP Press. She has also authored storybooks for children, Si Lola Apura at Si Lolo Un Momento by Adarna Books, and Ang Bisikleta ni Kyla by Philam Foundation. Her latest work is a science fiction novel, 58 Minutes in Driftland, which will be the first in a series of novels published by Kindle Books on Amazon.com. Good evening, Miss LS.A, Crisostomo-Lopez, or simply Iris.
Hello, good evening. Thank you very much, Consul Gonar, and thank you to the Embassy in Singapore for having us 3 here to give us a chance to promote also our books. Thank you very much. Looking forward to the discussion.
Thank you, Iris. So anyway, let's proceed with the discussion proper by asking first Migs. So tell us more about your book, The Rosales House, which features a young Filipino professional working as an advertising executive in Singapore. So what was your motivation in choosing to showcase this particular segment of the overseas Filipino community in Singapore?
Thanks for that wonderful question, Consul Gonar. When I started writing The Rosales House, which is a novel about the struggle of a young Filipina advertising executive in the Philippines, so I started writing about the world that I'm familiar with. And so it came naturally to me to talk about someone who is in working in a professional capacity. Looking at the Rosales House lens now, I realized that the novel is actually bringing some light to this segment of the overseas Filipino workers. Because when we talk about OFWs, we immediately think about our kababayans in the service or domestic sector. But there's actually a significant proportion of Filipinos overseas who are in the different professions as well. So I know of many people in IT, for example, in the banking sector, there are some scientists. And it's a known fact that Filipinos excel as well in visual arts, in the performance arts. So there's a lot of people that we can talk about in terms of prowess in the dramatic arts, and of course in literature. So I think by talking about this in the Rosales House, I'm hoping to essentially contribute into the diversity of the Filipino OFW narrative. And also by having this book, though it's not really my main intention when I set out to write about it, I'm hoping that it will provide a new model, especially for the young ones. Thank you.
Thank you, Migs. So basically, I like what you said about diversifying the OFW narrative. Because actually here in Singapore, the majority of our kababayans are really professional. So it's nice to see that we have something that showcases the other sector of our the diaspora community here in Singapore.
That's
So
right.
for Donna, The Overseas Fabulous Pinay is the only non-fiction among the 3 books featured in this webinar. So can you briefly share with us how you came up with this idea of writing a handbook or survival guide for Filipinas overseas?
Thank you for that question, Gonar. 4 years ago, after I got married and as I was about to turn 40, I was feeling nostalgic about my colorful single life. And at the same time, I was longing for a way to give back and make an impact. So I thought of writing a book. I initially wanted to write a fiction novel, but since I'm not a trained writer, it did not come easy to me. What came out were actually recommendations and checklists. And this was brought about by my years of being a consultant and an auditor and also as a corporate trainer. So when that happened, I shifted to writing the survival handbook. And I saw the importance of the handbook because I know for a fact that, Philippines, we're still in the state where Filipinos move abroad out of necessity and not out of choice. And 60% of the Filipinos who move abroad are actually women. And, women and, for most of these people, it would be their first time to move abroad, to deal with foreigners, even to look for a flat or even to fly. There's so many firsts, right? In summary, most of them will really have no clue or don't know what to expect once they arrive abroad. So that's where I found, a sweet spot for me to be able to help because with I have over almost 20 years of knowledge and experience, so I can definitely help here. And one of my objectives as well is to uplift the image of Filipinas living abroad. I wanted to draw away from the stereotypical OFW image where, who is someone who is working hard, miserable, and lonely. That's why I came up with this whole concept of the overseas fabulous Pinay. I chose the word fabulous because I wanted to depict a positive and strong image of a Filipino woman, someone who is confident, sophisticated, proud to be Filipino, and makes the Philippines proud. So that's basically the genesis of my book.
Actually, if you look at the book, apart from the way it was presented, it was very feminine, and then you wrote it in a, because when you say a handbook or a survival guide, what comes to mind is really that boring books that we see. But the way you presented it, you presented it in such a tongue-in-cheek or informal manner, so that you're also learning while at the same time being entertained by what you're reading in the book. So yeah, I take note of what you said about because Mig said she wanted to diversify the narratives of OFWs, and in your case, you wanted to veer away from the stereotypical image of overseas Filipinas who are usually depicted as miserable, as lonely. That you wanted to depict them as strong, fabulous women. So for Iris, 58 Minutes in Driftland follows a unique format, as it is the only, if not among the few, sci-fi stories that revolve around the Filipino diaspora. So why science fiction, and what inspired you to adopt this genre to the story of an overseas Filipino in the US?
Okay. My story is a coming of age story of a young boy named Alunsinag Bayani, who I depicted to be an immigrant in the U.S. And the characters in my story is there are mostly young people, teenagers. So it's an adventure story of traveling to another dimension where dreams and nightmares are real. So, and then there's the switching of places with your alternate self. So the target readers are young people. So science fiction becomes a perfect fit when you have young people going on an adventure, finding themselves in an unknown universe. So this is actually my first attempt at novel writing. I started as a short story writer. I published in local magazines. I also tried writing essays and poems. I wrote poems for my parents who are U.S. immigrants, but they already went back here in the Philippines. My husband is also a former OFW. So malapit sa puso ko talaga ang mga um, yung mga nasa abroad, ano, those who are far away. So yung loneliness and pananabik talaga na makapiling mo yung mahal mo, ano talaga yan eh, parang emotional fuel mo talaga to write something. So going back, yung pagsusulat ko ng novel is really something new to me. So kung iisipin mo, yung characters ko sa story nag-a-adventure. Ako din nag-a-adventure din ako, no? in this way. So what inspired me then to write in sci-fi, kasi I think yung mga immigrants natin, they are strangers, no, in a strange land, and science is also about the things we observe around us that are also strange, na hindi natin minsan maipaliwanag, 'di ba? There's the element of unpredictability, of exploring the unknown. So swak din siya doon in that way, no? So yun muna. baka mapahaba yung sagot ko, 'di ba?
No, it's okay. It's
So
okay,
yun.
Iris. Yeah, but I like how you pointed out that apart from science fiction, that you focus on teenagers. So when you're dealing with a young reading audience, I think science fiction would be a most appropriate genre. And I also like that you showcased immigrants, because we have to remind our viewers that when you talk about the Filipino diaspora, we're not just talking about overseas Filipino workers. We're also talking about immigrants. Like, for example, in the US and Europe, we have a lot of Filipino immigrants who, although they are technically US citizens or dual citizens, for example, but they haven't broken their bonds with their home country. So it showcases another segment of the Filipino diaspora. So anyway, for all the panelists, do you believe that Filipino diaspora literature will become a bigger trend in the future? How do you see it further evolving in the future in terms of subgenre and or style? Because I think it was mentioned before that when you talk about diaspora literature, even if you go back during the time of the Bible, when you talk about the story of Moses, the Exodus, that can be considered a form of diaspora literature. And many waves of diaspora, from the Irish, Africans, from the Arabs, they have told their stories many times through literature. So in the case of the Filipino diaspora, do you believe that this is something that will further evolve as we learn more about the different facets of the overseas Filipino community? So who wants to go first?
I can go first. Yeah, so that's a wonderful question again, Consul Gonar. In my observation, so in Singapore specifically, I see that there's a growing list of published Filipino authors. So whether it's a formerly Philippine-based and then migrated to Singapore. And I know that there's also a considerable or sizable community of Filipino poets who are active in the many activities in the country. Coming here to the US, I've become aware of a very large community of fellow Pinoys, in the literary area, and I know for a fact that, for example, the poet laureate of the San Mateo County in California, which is a very large county, it includes San Francisco, is actually a Filipina. So she's from UP as well. And in the state of Virginia, the poet laureate for the state is a Filipino professor, Miss Luisa Igloria. And I also just became aware that there are hundreds of educators, writers here in the US. By that sheer volume alone, I know that I have a feeling that the diaspora literature in Singapore as well as in the US will continue to grow. Hopefully across genres. So I'm more familiar with poetry and literary fiction because that's the genre I write in. But yeah, seeing Iris now, I know that yeah, it's gonna grow across genres. And yeah, I think that's what I have in mind. And also because of the uh, we see a lot more second generation Filipinos. I see that in Singapore as well, second generation migrants. So I think their experience will further enrich our collective experience as a diaspora. So I mean, these are young kids who have different views, different worldviews. So when they bring that out into the world, so that's another perspective, and that will only enrich our literature.
Donna?
Yeah, I mean, to add to that, I think it really has a potential to grow. As what Mig said, right? So especially in US, I know that there are many second generation Filipino authors. So and like talking from the nonfiction side as well, there's still, apart from the usual memoirs and biographies and autobiographies, there are other areas still to be topics to be tackled. You know, we have many accomplished Filipinas in business. So maybe a book about Filipino professionals living abroad, or successful Filipinos as entrepreneurs, or even entrepreneurs or Filipino migrants who have businesses in the Philippines while living abroad. There are many options.
Yes.
And on the fiction side, more so. There are various categories like young adult, new adult, romance, crime. So yeah, you name it. I mean, it has a potential to grow. That's my belief.
Before we turn to, I would just like to add, Migs mentioned that here in Singapore, actually, there's a growing circle of Filipino writers. In fact, this month, they're holding the Singapore Writers Festival, and they just had an event that featured Filipino poems. So it just goes to show that here in the region, there's already this widening appreciation of Filipino diaspora literature, whether, and this time in the form of poetry. And yeah, in the case of nonfiction, I mentioned earlier, I'm a fanatic of reading biographies and memoirs. And actually, nonfiction is something that's usually what they call is underestimated, because when you talk about literature, what really comes to mind are the fiction writers. But now, for example, many people, they want to share the richness of their real life experiences. And, coming from the Foreign Service, we are also part of that diaspora. So we look forward to having many more creative nonfiction writers contributing to this subgenre. So Iris, how about you? What's your perspective on this question?
Okay. Speaking of diaspora, no, I look it up, and there are two perspectives on that. It can either refer to the journey of people who are far from their homeland, as you mentioned, and it can also mean the works of people abroad. No, so these are two kinds of perspectives on the diaspora literature. And I also looked up how many. I'm interested in numbers. So you see, I looked up, I googled how many Filipinos are living abroad now. So I found out that there are 10 million Filipinos who are living abroad. No, this is according to migrationpolicy.org. So if you think of it, that's 10 million stories to write. So it's a treasure trove of experiences and stuff that you can draw stories from. And out of that 10 million, 2 million are in the US. So the US is the country with the largest number of Filipinos abroad. So that's based on a UN population estimate. And I also found out, as mentioned earlier by Migs, there is a vibrant Filipino-American writing community in the US, and they have this regular Filipino-American International Book Festival, which they hold every 2 years. It is hosted by the Philippine American writers and artists, and it is held in the San Francisco Public Library. So it's open. It's open to the public, and they have various events like poetry reading. They have puppet shows. They have performances, and also this workshops and panel discussions like this. So it's, if you think of it, it's very alive. The writing community in the US is very vibrant. And I also would like to share that they have this forecast that so I will read the forecast that Filipinos residing abroad will even surpass those writers who are in the Philippines. So meaning the works of these Filipinos abroad will even surpass, or in terms of quality and quantity, the works of those who are in the Philippines. So that's the trend now. So there is really the possibility that the diaspora literature will develop all the more, given all these vibrant writers abroad.
Thank you very much, Iris. Actually, it's very exciting when you mentioned the 10 million Filipinos. So that
Yes.
means a lot of options, a lot of stories, a lot of perspectives. And you mentioned that like in the US and even, for example, in Singapore, and I'm sure in Europe, there's already a growing a population, groups of Filipino writers who are just waiting for their stories to be read and to be heard. And I've been based in the Middle East also, and I would also be interested, for example, to learn about their stories because, given, for example, the cultural challenges that they face, this makes for a very compelling stories that I'm sure will... Actually, I came across one book when I was based in Qatar. It was written by actually a Kuwaiti, but the story revolved around a Filipina who had the son with the Kuwaiti. So when I saw that in the book, I couldn't remember the title, but it really fascinated me that even foreigners are starting to be inspired by the stories of our Filipino diaspora. So you don't have to be a Filipino actually to take part in this genre. Even if you are a foreigner and you are in tune with, for example, what's happening with the Filipino overseas community, they are also able to serve as effective storytellers of our experiences as a group overseas. So another question. Okay.
I just want to add to that, Gonar, because I said earlier it has a potential to grow, right? But we do need support because as you have seen in US, they have a vibrant community.
Yes.
Me as an author, a new author, I haven't really found my community yet of Filipino authors in Europe. So, and I relied a lot on the government, the different embassies to promote the book. But as an author, you will find that promoting your book is such a huge effort. It takes a lot of resources from the author itself, whether you're traditionally published or self-published. So it would be nice, if there are some initiatives from nonprofit organizations or even and even the government where the promotion of the literary talent would be prioritized and be seen as a cultural education, promotion, or preservation initiative.
Good thing you mentioned that, Donna, because, for example, in Frankfurt, the Philippines, they've been regularly participating in the Frankfurt Book Festival. In fact, based from my colleagues who are based there in our consulate there. Usually the Philippines would send a big delegation. So it's something worth exploring. I would definitely convey that to our colleagues, hopefully, because right now, I think because of the COVID-19, the Frankfurt Book Fair did not push through, but in the succeeding editions of the book fair, hopefully we can push for a Filipino diasporic literature to be showcased in the book fair. But that's a good suggestion, and definitely we will be conveying that to my colleagues. Thank you, Donna. So for all the panelists, how does Filipino diaspora literature contribute to ongoing public discourse on the socio-economic and political issues of migration in general? Would you consider diaspora literature from Filipino writers as also effective platforms for showcasing Filipino culture and psyche? I hope the question is not too heavy. So who wants to go first?
I can go first. I mean,
Okay.
I agree. I mean, literature has always been, for centuries, it's one of the oldest platforms, right, for information dissemination. So definitely, the question again is on how effective can it get? And this is where the support again is needed to help on making it an effective platform. But, with the different narratives that we have in the Filipino diaspora, it's very rich. So through literature, we can definitely send the message and make our culture more known and to be more mainstream.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I agree.
I agree totally. In fact, I think books are also considered as culture ambassadors in many ways. And in my case, for the Rosales house, it actually transports people to places in the Philippines, like in Metro Manila, Tagaytay, and Cagayan Valley. As you know, it's reeling right now because of the effect of Typhoon Ulysses. But prior to the typhoon, for example, Cagayan Valley is a very beautiful region, and that's not very commonly known by people abroad or even people in the Philippines. So, in fact, my early readers of the Rosales house mentioned that they felt like they were also traveling along with the main character, Claire Rosales, when she went to these places in the Philippines. So, yeah, it's a good way of showcasing the beautiful areas in the Philippines. There are so many beautiful places there, so even I haven't been to all of them. And I think it's a common impression as well that we're known for the beaches, but apart from beaches, there are also other beautiful communities that are just waiting to be explored. Also, I believe that literature open our eyes to other worldviews, and in terms of showcasing culture, I think the Rosales house also talked about that in how we celebrate the different occasions. So, for example, Filipinos are known to be celebrating Christmas not just for one day, but for months. So that's one thing I talked about, how passionate we are about our feast and celebrations, and how colorful the occasions are. And of course, I talk about the food culture, and including our ways or the way we mourn loved ones who have passed. So as a collectivist society in the Philippines, we get comforted by the rituals that we go through together with with our family, with our neighbors. It's a collective ritual that we give to honor the dead. So all this is bringing or highlighting the different aspects of Filipino culture.
Actually, I've read the book Migs, and I've never been actually to Cagayan. I've been to Baguio. I'm from the south, by the way. So just reading your book allowed me to imagine myself, visiting the place. And yeah, I agree. The way, for example, you showcase the celebrations, even the what they call this, the way the family, the Filipino concept of family operates in our society. Actually, I just realized that now when you mentioned it, that you basically actually gave a showcase of how Filipino culture is, and you don't have to necessarily be physically in that place. You just need to use your imagination and travel through the eyes of the characters in the book. How about you, Iris?
Okay. I totally agree that the historic literature is will contribute, no, to generating more awareness on the issues, especially now. There is the anti-immigrant
Yes.
messages of the former U.S. President Donald Trump. So he has these policies against cutting down the number of immigrants there. Um, this is very sad, but hopefully, I know through the works that we're doing and the focus on immigrants, we'll be able to talk about real issues like this discrimination, bullying, which I also touched on
Yes.
in my novel. So while my novel is fiction, I made sure that I tackle real life issues such as the ones I mentioned. So awareness, no, we're helping generate awareness on these real life issues.
I'm glad you mentioned that, Iris, about the growing anti-immigration sentiment. Actually, it's not just in the U.S., even in Europe, it has been
Okay.
such a sensitive topic. And yeah, it's true that it's one way for us to counteract
Yes.
that discrimination against immigration by showcasing, that these are people. These are not just characters, for example, that you just read in the news, that they are indeed human. So yeah, we need to humanize them through the stories that they tell. Just to before we proceed with the discussion, I would just like again to remind our viewers to share with us any questions, so that you can participate in the discussion. But while waiting for our viewers to share their questions, I have another question for you guys. With the current COVID-19 pandemic, how do you think does it? How do you think will it impact on the ongoing narratives of Filipino migrants? Especially right now, for example, in the U.S. and the Europe, and even in the Philippines, the cases are still high. So a lot of our kababayans actually are on the front lines, sacrificing their lives. So how do you think does this affect, for example, in the evolution of the narratives of Filipino migrants?
I can go
Okay.
first.
Okay.
Oh, sorry. Iris, go ahead.
Okay. Um, in my novel, I have a character, Chedeng. She is the mother of Alonsinag, the protagonist. So I made Chedeng. Chedeng's profession is a nurse because I want to highlight all the Filipino nurses in the U.S. and all the other places. Um, it's also a tribute to all our frontliners, no, who are sacrificing their lives during this pandemic. They are the modern day heroes now. So I highlighted that in my book. So I have a character who is a nurse. Also, I think also the pandemic is also pushing people to go online. So maybe aside from the paperback that we have, we also have the ebooks, which is getting more popular now because people wants to be safe in their homes, so they just read everything online. So going digital is also a trend now for everyone. Um, yeah, that's it.
Okay. Thank you, Iris. Mix, you were saying something?
Yeah. So first of all, I would like to acknowledge and thank DFA for its effort in repatriating hundreds of thousands of OFWs because of the pandemic. So I know for a fact that we've repatriated fellow kababayans, even from Uzbekistan. I mean, we've never heard of Filipinos in Uzbekistan before, but a friend of mine who is a pilot with Philippine Airlines, he and his son were actually the ones who went there and help in the repatriation of our kababayans, seafarers who were stuck during the pandemic. So I know that the pandemic is global, but I feel that the impact, especially to our kababayans, are very personal, the OFWs in particular, because they have to go back unexpectedly, and it has a great impact, of course, in terms of their um, livelihood, among many others. But I'm hoping that this would also open up opportunities for them back home. Maybe they will find out, better opportunities to be with their families. Sometimes crisis give an opening, right? Opens door to opportunities. So hopefully they will get that. Now, in terms of its impact on literature, so I think there are two immediate impacts. First is what Iris has mentioned, that more and more people are relying on books to keep them company during this pandemic. So we saw the growth in both physical and ebooks. And I think that's one impact on readership. Now, in terms of writing itself, so it has either the negative or positive impacts. So some authors are not able to concentrate, but I know that many authors take this opportunity to be more productive, and many, actually there's a term for it now, it's called pandemic literature. So I guess after this we will see a lot of literature coming out, books that were written during the course of the pandemic.
Thank you, Migs. Donna, would you like to add something?
Yeah, I mean, they covered most of it, but on the nonfiction side as well, the appetite to learn is there with the people who are not fortunately not the frontliners. People are moving more towards reading books, going online, having e-learnings to learn more because of the time that we have.
Yes.
And as an author, same. There's the pandemic literature. Either you yourself, how it impacted you, how you see others impacted by the pandemic, and it's also interesting to know, right? How is the pandemic impacting someone who lives in this country versus there? So I think those are the various narratives.
Thank you, Donna. We have, according to June, we have two questions from our viewers. From Windell, not sure if this has been asked. Curious, what are our speakers' motivation to write? So what motivates you to write? To come up with your respective publications.
I think I mentioned this at the start. No, for me, it was really I wanted to capture my experience in order that I can use that same experience and learnings to give back and make an impact.
Thank you. The other panelists, what are your other motivations in writing, for example? Like in the case of, I know for a fact, for Migs, your routine is you wake up early in the morning, and then while others are sleeping. So what keeps you going, given that you also have your own family?
Yeah. So for me, writing is a form of expression. And this year, since I became a full-time writer, coming to the US, I try to have a routine because it's different versus when you're working in an office.
Yes.
So I try to keep a routine. I try to keep like measurements of my productivity, because I don't want the day to just go away. So I do that in terms of word counts, or basically there are a lot of as Donna said, it's difficult actually to promote a book, to market a book. So even if I'm published by one of the big fives, Penguin Random House is probably I think it's the biggest publisher in the world by far, but still I have to do a lot of promotion. So as a Facebook. But yeah, I do a lot of marketing on the side, so I try to keep a routine. Now, in terms of the creative side, I think what motivates me to write is I actually remember what Iris just mentioned, that, one person means one story, right? And I also feel that, I have probably I have more than one story to tell. So I try to tap into that. And yeah, it's also a sign of my, I guess it's a record of my productivity as an individual.
How about you, Iris? What's your motivation?
Ah, okay. Thinking now, actually, I have now more time because I just retired last 2017, and I became a full time mother to my now 4 kids. I got pregnant again, and I gave birth just last December. So I have an 11 month old baby boy. So after 3 girls, I now have a baby boy.
Wow.
So
Good
so
news.
yes, humabol pa, 'di ba? I am already 45. Okay. Anyway, sabi nga nila, 'pag wala kang magawa sa bahay, right? Marami kang naiisip, no? Magsulat, mag-compose. And some of my friends really said this pandemic, marami nga daw creative side ang lumabas sa mga tao because ang tagal nila sa bahay, and talagang lalabas ang mga talento ng mga tao. So ako, I ventured into novel writing na nasabi ko na kanina, no? It's a first time.
Yeah.
And my kids are growing, so I also have my eldest, who is 14. Medyo nagka-clash kami kasi teenager na siya and dami niyang ideas, and ikaw naman nanay, controlling ka naman, gusto mo yung ways ng nanay mo i-impose mo rin sa kanila, gusto mo ganito, 'di ba? So all this, yung lahat ng ito, biglang alam mo yon, bigla kang nanganak ng isang konsepto na bago dahil halo-halo na siya sa experiences mo, no? Together with the house chores, 'di ba? Dati nasa opisina ka, tapos ngayon ikaw na lahat dito sa bahay, no? Hirap na hirap ka, alam mo 'yon. So everything nagsama-sama siya, and nailuwal mo into a writing a written work. So yun yung nangyari sa akin. Bunga ng pandemya, lumabas ang isang novel. Bunga ng pagstay sa bahay and pagre-retire. So maybe yung mga kababayan natin na maybe affected by the pandemic, maybe don't look at it as negative. Maybe something good will come out of it. Maybe your creative side will be tapped. Maybe dinadala ka ni Lord sa ibang avenue to explore what you can do. You can do other things other than yung alam mong gawin. So maraming posibilidad ang dumarating sa atin, no? Sa dami ng experiences natin now, no? So yun, mahaba masyado, ano?
No, but basically, you're saying that you had your 5th child na. So with the book, it's your 5th.
Apat lang po, apat.
No, what I mean is your book is your 5th child.
Yes.
No, but I have to say that our panelists are all mothers. And I also have my own daughter, and sometimes it's really hard. It's really a struggle to balance your work and taking care of your family. And then coming up with your own literary masterpiece. It's not something that you go through in one day. It's really a long process. So I really have to salute our 3 strong, empowered female panelists who are showing that Filipino mothers are really experts when it comes to multitasking. So saludo ako sa inyo. So there's another question here. Thanks so much to all the authors for their wonderful sharing. I'm wondering what was the publication journey like for each of you? How did you choose a publisher? And for Donna, what was the self-publication journey like? So Donna, probably you could start.
Mhm. So for me, I did not have much choice because my main motivation to complete my book was because I got pregnant. So as you might have remembered, I said, I started the journey 4 years ago, but I really just finished last year. When I got pregnant, I was motivated to really complete my book because I thought, you know what, it's now or never. Maybe I won't have time anymore because I was also working. And so I went to self-publishing because I know the whole, I read a lot about the traditional publishing journey, and I did not think it was for me at that point in time because I did not have a lot of time, and I also wanted to preserve a lot of my work because, as you know, in traditional publishing, your work will really be critic, and there will be a lot of rewrites and so on. So I did not want that process. I really want to keep my content intact as much as possible and really meet my deadline of publishing. So yeah, it's self-publishing. It's a very good experience. I learned a lot. There are things that maybe I could have done better. Now I know what they are. So it's good to have at least one a go because now, yeah, it's a good experience, I would say.
In the case of Migs, because you're lucky that your book was published by one of the biggest publishing companies in the world. So how was it like? What was the process?
Yeah, I think I came at the right time. That's one part of it. And I guess I was ready with my work. So I actually joined courses, including the one by Curtis Brown in the UK. So that course, in terms of editing the novel and pitching it, helped me a lot to, work on the publication of the book. So after that course, I sent my pitch to Penguin Random House, including the manuscript, my first draft of the manuscript. And I guess I was fortunate because at that time they were open to submissions. And I'm saying this because normally the top 5 publishing companies require agents, so you cannot just go straight to them. So I guess that's the luck part because I managed to submit my manuscript during that open window. So I guess, relatively speaking, I'm comparing this to the traditional pace in other countries. Relatively speaking, the publication was quite fast in Singapore. So I guess that's the Singapore factor in there. Alam mo naman yan, Consul Gonar, di ba? Mabilis lahat sa Singapore. So I think the turnaround time from my submission to the acceptance was only a couple or 3 months. So that's quite fast from a publishing perspective because normally in other markets, it takes 6 months or even 1 year. Also, from the moment that they've accepted in up to like the editing, so there's a series of editing process. One is the structural edits, and I actually appreciated the structural edits that was shared by Nora, who is the associate publisher of Penguin Random House in Southeast Asia, because with her inputs, I saw that the Rosales house became a stronger piece. So that's one big input that I've benefited from coming from, being published by Penguin Random. Second, the line editing, copy editing, all the other types of editings that are involved. It's a tedious process. So there's I think at least 3 iterations, but this process gave me confidence about the quality of the book that's out now in the market because, of course, being a big publishing company, they have the experience and they have the resources to ensure the success of a book.
I'll just have to add to what Migs said because I also got to engage with the office of Penguin here in Singapore, and I noticed that they have this conscious effort to showcase more Southeast Asian writers. So it's not just diasporic literature per se, but they also want to highlight more writers from the region, and it's a good opportunity for us, not just for Filipinos, but also for other Southeast Asian writers who are just waiting, for their stories to be read and appreciated by a larger audience. In the case of Iris, yours is being published by Amazon.com. Is that right? So how was the process of getting published?
Okay. It's actually a first time for me to try publishing with Kindle books. So this is it's the direct publishing platform of Amazon. So it's actually it's similar to self-publishing. You don't have an editor, and you just submit your manuscript online, and then you're also the one who will design your cover, the cover of your book. Everything is basically, it's up to you. So it's a first time for me. I just tried it, and I was actually joining a contest by Amazon. So to join the contest, you have to submit your novel. So for me, I think it's a win-win situation because so I joined the contest and I also published my book. No, so it's a win-win contest. But the downside is that you don't have an editor, unlike Migs, who would correct you and catch all these grammatical errors or similar stuff. So I don't have an editor. My editor is my daughter, Kim. So I let her reread it for the second time and the third time. And we were rushing because the deadline of the Amazon contest is 12 o'clock. So 11 o'clock, alam mo yon, naghahabol ka and kasi gusto mo sumali sa contest. But alam mo yon, it's a first time for me. Hopefully yung second book ko mas pulido na. Alam mo yon, mas may time na wala kang hinahabol na deadline. I'm writing the second sequel to the series. It's a trilogy actually. Yung utak ko nasa third book na, alam mo yon, pero yung second book hindi ko na nasusulat masyado. Chapter 1 pa lang. Ang hirap, alam mo, ang hirap. Sana yung mga gustong magsulat, alam niyo magsulat kayo kasi ano siya, iba siya. Alam mo yon, yung na-excite ka na ayaw mo pang matulog sa gabi kasi gusto mo pang magsulat kahit puyat ka na. Alam mo yon, kasi that's the time na tulog na yung mga anak mo, meron ka ng solo time for yourself, tapos doon ka na magsusulat. Alam mo yun, kahit gabing-gabi na. Pero yun nga, eye bags na yung lalabas sa'yo sa umaga. But writing is it's part of me. It's who I am. Siguro ganun, kahit pag napagod ka, gusto mo pa rin magsulat. So yung mga may talent naman o yung gusto ring magsulat pero hindi pa natatry, I suggest you give it a try, 'di ba? There's always a first time, and then sa second time nyo, mas gamay nyo na, mas malay nyo ma-publish din kayo, 'di ba? Let's write para dumami ang mga libro all around, 'di ba? Here and abroad.
Yes,
But-
and yeah. I want to add to that. I want to add to that as well. So self-published doesn't mean you don't have an editor. It just means you organize everything for yourself.
Yes.
So I had an editor, I had a proofreader, I had my book design layout, done by people for me. So
Wow.
that's the difference. It's just that it's a different pricing model as well. If traditional, meaning you have royalties, well, in self-publishing you have your income direct to you. So it's a different model. Yeah.
I think it's
And yeah,
nice
just do
actually.
it. Just do it.
But I think it's nice that the publishing industry is slowly being liberalized because, as
Yeah.
mentioned earlier, the traditional way you need to have an agent. So if you're a writer and you want your writing to be read, you have to go through that middleman layer, which complicates the process. So hopefully, through time, the publishing industry would be more liberalized to give more platforms for aspiring writers. There's another question from our labor attaché, Mr. Saul Divri. Indeed, there is so much to write about the diaspora. Migrants' experiences are so rich and varied. Congratulations to our speaker, writers. Keep on writing. So thank you very much, Labat, for
Thank you.
joining
Thank
us.
you.
From Miss Migs, would you say that your book is an effort to help rewrite or diversify the narratives of overseas Filipinos, especially for women?
Yeah, I'm actually quite happy that incidentally that's how the book is panning out to be. So as initially I started writing the book from my own experience, but of course as I went along, it evolved into this kind of I won't say statement, but it evolved into this work that touches on the segment, the professional group in Singapore. So I guess in a way it wasn't intentional, but I'm just happy that it's the way it is now, and I'm just happy that it's actually providing a new paradigm, a new model, and hopefully to diversify the OFW narrative, that there are different segments, like similar with any nation for that matter. We have we have capabilities in many areas, not just in the domestic or service sector. So we excel in many other fields, whether it be in science, banking, arts. Of course, we are very known for that. But putting the book out there and showcasing this segment is also improving that perception that there's more to OFWs than our typical service sector team. Having said that, all professions are humble professions.
Yes.
But what I think is quite impressive is that whatever made Filipino excel in the service sector, our dedication, our caring attitude, it's actually the same, I think, characteristics that help us succeed as professionals, as a banker, as an IT specialist, as a scientist. So it's this unique characteristic, dedication, our industry that help us excel elsewhere as well.
Thank you, Migs. So for Donna, your book is obviously targeted at the typical Filipino professional overseas. So what can you advise then to our other female overseas Filipinos from other sectors, especially those working as household service workers, in order to become, as fabulous as you are? Because we're talking already about diversifying the narratives of overseas Filipino women. But going back again to our kababayans who are working in the household service sector, how would you make your book more relatable to them?
Please read my book. So
Yeah.
let me inspire you and give me a chance to help you improve your life and make your life more worthwhile while you're living overseas, because I'm pretty sure that most of the topics that I covered have been encountered by anyone who is planning to live abroad or already abroad. Okay, regardless of gender, regardless of profession, and even regardless of nationality. So it's something for everyone.
So again, read Donna's book in order to be as fabulous as she is. So for Iris, this is the last question for this panel discussion. So what can we expect from the follow-up to your novel, 58 Minutes in Driftland, which you said will be the first in a series?
Yeah, so my book 58 Minutes in Driftland, it's out on Amazon. You can get a copy. It's available in ebook and paperback. It's an allegory on a person's journey to self-realization, discovering one's hidden potential. It's a story on a young immigrant, Alonsinag Bayani. I really choose that name because I really want it to be Pinoy sounding. Okay, and then his parents there. He's also beset by discrimination and bullying, and he accidentally stepped into this alternate realm, which is a different world, and then he switches with his alternate self, who is more efficient. So the adventure continues on the book 2 that I am starting to write. So hopefully hindi kayo mabitin sa book 1. Pero okay lang din kung mabitin kayo. So you look forward to book 2. And I envision this to be a trilogy. So there's a book 3 definitely. Hindi ko na pahahabain, baka ma-preempt yung kwento, no? Basta I hope you get a copy. It's for young people out there who have a low self-esteem, who is being bullied. You look up my book and see how you can overcome your bullies in life.
Thank you. So before I allow you to invite our viewers to get a copy of your book, I would just like to highlight some key takeaways. So during the discussion, we highlighted the need to diversify the narratives of overseas Filipinos. It was mentioned that 60% of OFWs are actually women. So that sector itself already gives a lot of potential in terms of the perspectives and the stories that they can share. Right now, there are around 10 million Filipinos overseas, 2 million of which are in the US. So that means that we have this treasure trove of narratives waiting to be written and to be read. There's also the need to highlight more support for Filipino writers, especially in order for them to be more competitive in a global marketplace. And it was also mentioned that right now the publishing industry is slowly being liberalized. So hopefully this will encourage more Filipino writers to showcase their works. And it was also mentioned that the pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic, has definitely made an impact on our overseas Filipinos. So I guess they say that part of making a story more compelling are the conflicts, the challenges that we face, and definitely the COVID-19 pandemic. Looking at it from a positive perspective will hopefully motivate more writers to come up with more interesting literature. So again, before we close the webinar, I would like to give each and every one of you the chance to give your closing statements and to invite our viewers for the last time. So Migs, you can start.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Consul Gonar. Thank you, June, for this wonderful discussion. And thank you to Ambassador Yap as well. My book, The Rosales House, is available in Singapore through Kinokuniya Bookstore. It's also available through Amazon, Go Guru, and Epigram shops. It will soon be available in the Philippines. So good news. Hopefully it will be in the Philippines before Christmas. It would be in National Bookstore. It will be available in the UK, US, and Canada on January 2021. So it will be on Waterstones, W.H. Smith, and other booksellers in the United Kingdom. Here in the US, it will be available in Barnes & Noble and other bookshops, and in Canada, in Indigo. And of course, you can always order it online from Amazon, both in terms of paperback and Kindle edition. So once again, thank you so much for all your support, and take care, everyone.
Thank you, Migs. So I give the floor now to Donna.
Yes, so again, to Ambassador Yap, Consul Gonar, and to June of Rated J, thank you so much for having me. This has been a great opportunity to speak about Filipino diaspora literature. And to everyone who tuned in, thank you so much. Thank you for your support. So with regards to my book, it's available on all major online retailers, so Amazon, Kobo, Barnes & Noble, Book Depository, and so on and so forth. So any major retailers. It's also available on my website at ofabpinay.com. I only sell the ebook version there, but the printed books and ebook are all on the online retailers. And if you're interested for bulk sales, just contact me at Donna at ofabpinay.com and you will be guaranteed discounts. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Donna. Last but not least, Iris.
Okay, thank you, Consul Gonar. Thank you also to the Ambassador Yap and to Centro Filipino for hosting this webinar. So again, I hope you get a copy of my book, 58 Minutes in Driftland. It's available on Amazon.com via Kindle Books. It's available in ebook and paperback editions. And I also hope to finish the second book before the year ends, and the third book by next year. So thank you very much.
Looking forward to that, Iris. So on behalf of the Philippine Embassy Singapore and the Centro Rizal, thank you to our panelists and to those who joined us via Facebook Live. I also wish to thank Rita J for serving as our media technology partner. I hope we all learn and enjoy the conversation. So please continue supporting our Filipino writers and their books. Mabuhay to Philippine literature, arts and culture, and to diasporic literature. So good night from Singapore and the mabuhay. And you can still catch the webinar. It will be posted on Facebook and also on the YouTube page of the Philippine Embassy Singapore. So maraming salamat po.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.